Okay, and Edwin?
And the recording is on now, yep.
Recording
and it's for educational purposes, and it might be posted to the internet.
Great, thanks. Okay, so we thought we'd start with a little round of quick personal check-ins. Your name, where you are, and let's see, I'll just kind of go around my screen. Pavel, could you start us off, please?
So my name is Pavel and I'm from Malta.
Okay, great. Katrina?
Hi, I'm Katrina. I'm from Bristol, the UK, and I work with the Clean Air Alliance, and we do some stuff with XR as well.
Great, welcome. Anish? You're muted.
Hi, I'm Anish, and I'm calling in from India.
Great, welcome. Brian?
Hey everyone, my name is Brian. I am in Ottawa, Canada.
Great, welcome. Aoife?
Hi, I'm Aoife and I'm in Donegal in Ireland.
Okay. Gregory?
Sorry, I was filling out the survey.
It's okay.
I'm in Oaxaca, New Mexico, USA.
Great, welcome. Max?
Hello, I'm Max and I'm from Germany.
Welcome. Sumita?
Hello, I'm Sumita. I'm also from Germany.
Great, great to have you.
Thank you.
Sure. And please correct me if I pronounce your name wrong. Hatu? Is that right? Okay, maybe not. You're muted.
Yes, sir. Sir, my name is Tu Wan So, and I'm from Myanmar, which is situated between China and India.
Right. So let me say Tu Wasu. Is that correct? Is that
yes.
It? Okay. All right. Feel free to correct me if I mess up on that again. Okay. Dean.
Hello, I'm Dean. I'm from Plymouth, United Kingdom.
All right. You're ahead of the game there, Dean. Samantha, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Samantha, and I'm living in New Jersey, USA.
Okay. And then we did Sumita already, and then Minter. Minter, can you hear me? And would you like to just kind of introduce yourself? Tell us.
Sure, there I am. I'm in the streets of London, England. My daughter's in Bristol, so I share. And great to see so many people from all over the world.
Yeah, great to see you. It looks like a nice day there. Great. Okay, did I miss anybody in the introductions? Oh, I'm sorry, Lou, us, the facilitators, sorry. All right, big thing, I'm sorry. Lou, go ahead.
Sure, so I'm Lou Zweier. I'm one of the instructors, and I'm in Northern California in the US.
Great. Edwin?
Edwin Rutch from San Francisco Bay Area, and I'll be doing the tech support today for these trainers.
My name's Bill Filler. I'm in the Bay Area. I've been working with the Empathy tent for a while, and I'm, that's me. Okay.
So, can I just say something, Bill, before you proceed?
Absolutely.
I wanted to make a little clearer statement about recording. So we are recording this class. We're recording the whole class, and it may be posted on the internet. And the reason we're recording it is so that people can learn from it, from watching what we do. And so I just want to make that clear that that's happening.
Okay. Thanks, Lou. All right. Okay, generally, there are 3 learning outcomes we hope you take away from this training. And I know that some people will be here, some people won't, so we'll deal with that as we go along. First of all, we hope that you understand and become familiar with the goals, values, and the course structure of the Empathy Circle, so you can guide others through the experience. It's really, we call it the Empathy Circle experience. And that's very important, the experiential part. Second, and just as important, that the participants will be confident and comfortable with beginning to facilitate. You're not going to be a Kung Fu master facilitator, but you hopefully will get a breadth and know exactly, where your strengths and challenges lie, and where to go from there, and also where to get support from us. Okay. Finally, we hope you leave this training have established strong bonds with each other and continue to support each other with your training and growth. Although the training is short, we view the practice of listening and facilitating as a lifelong practice akin to physical exercise. So we're looking to, we use this process to do what we call build a culture of empathy. And so part of the cohort and the facilitation and the ongoing relationships is a big part of that. Okay, so generally, just to summarize, we plan to take you through the Empathy Circle experience in the first class. The second class will be preparatory class for facilitation. And the third and fourth class will be a facilitating experience and a reflection on your learning experience. And that's the 4-course arc. Now, I mentioned the culture of empathy. And we also, to let you know that this course, and we're sort of like in a process of roughing all this stuff out. So this is a work in progress. So I want to acknowledge that. And then Lou is going to discuss with us some of the core principles of a culture of empathy. So Lou?
Thanks, Bill. So I just pasted into the chat some text about explaining some of what we are formulating as the core principles of a culture of empathy. And this is incomplete. You know, what is here came out of a discussion that the Empathy Circle team has been having for a while. And actually we're holding Empathy Circles on Friday mornings. Is it Friday or Saturday, Edwin?
On values, the Culture of Empathy values is every Friday, 10 a.m.
Okay.
Pacific time.
Yeah, so we're actually holding Empathy Circles on Friday mornings about this topic. And so individual ones of these will be discussed or new ones discussed. And the idea behind this, part of the reason this is important, is part of the purpose of teaching Empathy Circle practice and trying to spread it out is trying to create more of a culture of empathy in the world. And exactly what that means is part of what we're defining, but one of the ways I think about it is that a culture of empathy is where, you know, people respond to each other with a desire for understanding, with curiosity, with openness. So if you look in the chat here, these are the things: curiosity, openness, honesty, mutuality, inclusion, and equality. And one of the reasons, and the Empathy Circle process, the structure of it, the attributes of it, help to support a culture of empathy, help support and create a culture of empathy in the Empathy Circle, so that people get a chance to experience what it's like to be in a culture of empathy. But the structure itself, while it encourages that, it's important to understand the principles that underlie it, so that if something gets knocked off kilter, or you can't do the structure, or someone makes a request to do something different, you have some principles that you can rely on to decide as a facilitator how to modify what's happening in the moment. Or it also provides a way for you to explain to people who object to the process, like, why are we doing this way? You know, what some of the reasons are behind the reasons that it's structured the way that it is, and the benefits. So I'm just going to read these quickly. So curiosity, so the idea that curiosity about others and what's important to them, that the intention is for people participating is to bring this kind of attitude of curiosity about other people and what's important to them. Openness, so openness about oneself and about different points of view. So about oneself, that's internal, and about different points of view, that's external. Honesty, being honest about what is important to you, even if it's different from what other people are thinking or feeling. So that's kind of being brave in the space to say what's true for you. And mutuality. So this is a key one that often doesn't happen in just regular conversations. So one of the main things that's different between an Empathy Circle and kind of a regular conversation, where people just say whatever they want and people that have a lot to say or have very strong opinions or emotions, or they're very extroverted, often dominate group conversations. And by dominate, I mean they wind up talking a lot more than other people. And people who are shyer or who are less confident in their opinions, they wind up listening a lot and just being quiet. And the empathy, the mutuality, the idea that everyone's feelings and thoughts matter and that they're a contribution and that everyone should have a time for them to say whatever they want to say, and that's built into the structure. That's a key part of mutuality, empathy, culture of empathy. And then inclusion, that just means maybe taking an active role in making sure that there is richness present in a conversation, inviting others in who are different and making sure that you have different points of view and not just defaulting to, who's ever around or whatever's comfortable. And then equality, this just means that people participate in the circle as human beings, not in whatever role they might have with one another otherwise. So not boss employee, not parent child, not whatever kind of levels of social status there are, the different ones there are. We try to remove them or reduce them, and we ask people to participate in the circle as equals, and just as human beings, not as whatever other role they might have in life. Okay, so we could have a whole empathy circle on this topic, and like I said, Friday mornings we're having them. So if a deeper conversation we could have, but I'd like to just have a little bit of response to what I've said. So does anybody want to make a comment about, let's say, maybe what principle is important to them that they've just heard and why? And we'll just get a few people, I guess. How much longer do we have for this, Bill? Do you know?
Well, we're doing pretty well.
Okay.
Take about 5 minutes or so.
Okay, so Pavel?
Just want to mention something about openness. Experience that I had last week was that I was a listener and the talker, he wasn't fully open. So I tried to reflect a few times without success. And it was until he opened fully, then I was able to empathize with the person. So openness is kind of like a key factor so the listener can empathize. And often we withhold things and we're not fully open, and that leads to us not being able to empathize fully. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Pavel. Although I will say, I think it is important to be accepting of where people are. So while we encourage openness and we want people to be open, we want them to feel safe to be open. We don't want to use a crowbar or make people feel like there's something wrong with them if they are sharing, and they're not very open. So I think the response to lack of openness is acceptance and trying to create more safety. Yeah. Samantha, did you have your finger up?
So for me, like, all of these make a lot of sense, but the mutuality piece was something that was, I guess, a little bit less obvious. I don't think I would have come up with that on my own, but the more I think about it, the more I realize how certain voices are just, they're more amplified, they're more out there than other voices. So I like this idea of creating a space where all voices can be heard equally. So that really resonated for me.
Great, thank you. Brian.
Yeah, I noticed how one of my values that I brought into one of the talks was safety or psychological safety, but I also noticed that it's not here, maybe because it's built into the process. Like you're naturally safe when you have space to speak into that in the structure. So I think that's pretty cool just to notice that safety is, I'm just not being interrupted.
Great, thank you.
I just wanted to mention Anish and Minter have the little hands up, their little symbols.
Thank you. I had not noticed that. Anish.
Thank you so much, Edwin. Yeah, I think my point just got made by Brian, so I'm happy to put my hand down. One of the crucial things that I'm understanding is the emotional or psychological safety that we create as a part of a culture of empathy. So somehow that piece is missing. And I'm also very curious to know the principle of mutuality to understand a bit more. Sometimes I find the words mean different in different cultures. So I'm looking forward to come on the Friday meet and just have some more understanding about mutuality. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I want to say one more word about safety, since two people have talked about it. So we think of the empathy circle as a brave space, not necessarily as a safe space if you're thinking that safe space means that you don't have to hear anything that you don't want to hear. So one of the rules of the circle is that when it's your turn to speak, you can say whatever you want. You know, and that the person reflecting it back, they're not agreeing. For reflecting is not agreeing. It's just making sure you understand. And we've had a lot of conversation about, well, what if somebody says something really offensive, you know, and that just gets reflected back. And I'm not gonna, that's a long conversation, and I don't want to take time to get into that now. And certainly we can return to that later in the training. I'll just say that something magic, I've been in circles where people say things that's really charged, emotionally charged or difficult. And there's something magical that happens when what happens in response to that is it gets reflected back. And then that's just it. And then we move on to the next person. Usually some kind of shift happens over time, maybe not right away, but some kind of shift starts to happen when that person starts to feel heard, even if they're really charged. Minter.
So I had two comments about the openness concept. First of all, I had a big aha in the last one I had, where I started off with something vulnerable, which I didn't exactly plan. But what happened was that the second person layered in and brought in something far deeper and stronger. And the consequence was that by the end of the 2 hours, we had all four of us opening up, and the fourth person took about an hour and a half, but finally opened up. He was a CEO of a big company, and so was very tender about it. The second point, so start off with something yourself as the MC or, you know, moderator. And the second point was the idea of not recording it. I think the issue of the idea of recording, which I took from Edwin, is that that puts a kibosh on willingness to be totally open when they know, when they just feel uncertain about where it goes afterwards. That's why I just wanted to add those 2 points in.
Thanks. And so, Max.
I think curiosity is really important. The idea of meeting people who have opposing viewpoints, but still acknowledging that we have shared feelings and shared needs, basically the same needs. And keeping this in mind helps me being open-minded towards others, even if what they represent or think might seem offensive to me. So that resonated a lot with me.
Thank you, Max. How are we doing on time? Does anyone? I'm not good at tracking time.
That's all right. It's 10:22. I think, you know, we can maybe have 1 or 2 more reflections, and then we go into the how-to, and then we get into the circles.
Okay. Has anyone who has not said anything yet would like to say something?
I see Pavel.
Yeah, he's spoken once already.
Okay.
I'm asking if anyone else. Katrina.
I found it quite helpful how you were explaining about the structure and how useful that structure is when there's an issue in the group, and because you can always go back to that. And I'm actually part of a council circle, and this happened last week in the circle, and somebody wanted to do something which was totally not part of what we were there for. And the facilitator had to step in and say, actually, no, what you want to do isn't part of this process. And it was really interesting just observing that, because I had a lot of emotions going on there, because I felt kind of annoyed that he'd even suggested this, but it was also relief that the structure was there and it was very clear, no, this is just not acceptable. So it gives you, I guess, that safety net that you kind of instinctively feel, no, this is not a good idea, but you don't have to say anything because the facilitator will step in and say that.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, Pavel, did you want? Oh, sure. Sumita, is that how you say it?
Yes. It just came up now because of the lady before now. Yeah, she said something about safetiness, and the last days I was looking on Facebook about the discussion about needs and about the nonviolent communication in general. So I'm asking myself about how can we what is our vision about the value? Some say there they have a need of safety, and I'm asking myself when we can use really safety as a need, or what is maybe sometimes under the need, under the safety. So in my understanding, it's about connection, and I would like to have a space once to understand what do we think about these words, like safety net and all
Okay.
this stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right. I think I see that Minter has his hand up, but I think we need to move on time-wise. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And Pavel, I know we didn't get to hear you either, so maybe you can fold it in later or come to the Friday morning circles. So the next, we want, the reason we're moving on is because we want to be sure that we have adequate time for the Empathy Circle experience for you all to participate in that, and then to have a debrief afterwards. One of the things that a facilitator does is describe the Empathy Circle process to people who are going to participate in it, and to describe what they will do in their role as facilitator to help hold the circle. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to describe that, and then Bill's going to take us into the circle. So, and maybe all of you have participated in Empathy Circle before. I'm not sure if this is the first time for anyone, but I'm going to describe it again anyway, just because how one describes it is a practice, and we'll be practicing that in the second class. You'll break up into twos and practice describing the process to each other. So this is how I describe it. So the Empathy Circle is a structured listening process that's different than a regular conversation. So it's not just an open conversation where whoever thinks of something talks. It has more structure to it than that. And the reason for the structure is to ensure that everyone has a chance to be heard for what's important to them. And so the way it works is people take turns speaking. And when before a person starts to speak, they select someone else in the circle who's going to reflect back what they understand the person is saying. Now, everyone in the circle listens to the speaker, but the person who's going to reflect back, when the person pauses, the speaker pauses, that person will reflect back what the speaker's saying. And usually there's a time, you do it for a certain amount of time. Typically it's 5 minutes or 3 minutes, somewhere in there. Sometimes there's a topic for the circle, sometimes not. It could just be, the circle could be no topic, just whatever's alive in you, whatever you feel like talking about. And it's also a rule of the circle that when you're the speaker, even if there's a topic, when it comes to you and you're the speaker, you can talk about whatever's most important to you in that moment. And that's actually important to do because it keeps the circle alive and kind of real, to talk about what's most important to you in this moment that's coming up. The person who is being the reflector their job is to just reflect back what they understand the person is trying to get across. And, you know, in normal conversation, it's very common to respond to what someone says by agreeing or disagreeing or complimenting or, you know, asking a question or sharing your own experience about that thing. That's a normal thing to do. That's typically what people do. That's not what we're doing in this process. When it's your turn, you can say whatever you want. If you have a question, you could speak it. You know, if you have a comment or a thought about it, you can do that. But when you're the reflector, then your job is just to reflect back what you understand the person is saying. And as a facilitator, if that's not happening, one of those other things is happening, I will step in and, you know, I'll say, hold on, I hear you asking a question. That's not really what your role is at this moment. The way you know your time is up is, well, we have a timer that will keep time, and the timer has a sound, and so you'll hear the sound go off. And when you hear it go off, you don't have to stop instantly, but finish the idea that you're speaking, and then get whatever final reflection from the other person. And then when your turn is finished, you can say, I feel heard. If you feel heard, hopefully you do feel heard. If not, I mean, that's the other thing that I would do as a facilitator, is that if the reflector is not really hearing the speaker, and they've tried several times and it's not happening, then as a facilitator, I might reflect back what I think the speaker is saying to try to help facilitate the speaker being heard. Yeah, and so then when the speaker is done and the listener has reflected and they're feeling it's to their satisfaction, then the speaker becomes the listener. I mean, then the listener becomes the speaker, and they take a turn speaking, and they pick someone else in the circle to listen to them. And the speaking and listening goes around the circle so that everybody gets a chance to speak and be heard. So I think that's how I would describe it. I think that's most everything that's important. Edwin or Bill, did I leave anything out that you think is important?
No, I don't think so. I think that part of the class will be finding your way. So one of the ways that I try to put people at ease is to admit that it's kind of awkward. It's not the same as so if I correct you or if I do anything, it's not a criticism of you or your ideas, but it's to try to give you the circle experience, you know, in a way. And so, and that seems to work, at least, you know, partially, to put people at ease.
Okay. Edwin, anything to add?
No, that's
okay. All right, so Bill, you want to take it?
Sure. So today we do kind of like a deeper dive into listening, and the goal for a facilitator is that Empathy Circle is simply not what is said, but how you and the others in the group feel. In a successful Empathy Circle, everyone feels heard. That's our goal as a facilitator and everyone. Today, what we'll do is a topic, and again, you can also go to wherever else you want if you need to. Think of the different types of listening you do. Listening to people, but also listening to the sounds of nature, the sounds of the street, and also the internal listening, the figurative listening, like listening to your heart or listening to your inner demons, if you want to go there. Hopefully you won't. And then also think of a time where you really felt heard and how that made you feel. So these are just some fodder for thought. And then we'll be going into breakout circles, and then we'll discuss using the Empathy Circle practice. So I think we're ready to go into the breakout room, unless Lou or Edwin, you have anything you'd like to add.
Does anybody have any questions before we go into breakout rooms?
I had something. I just, in terms of the amount of people, I think we're going to do 5 per circle. Just
okay.
And so I was doing all the. What was our topic? Could you?
Listening.
The topic, yeah,
Listening.
listening. Yeah, deep dive into listening.
Okay. Okay, you ready for the rooms, or?
Yeah.
Yep.
And how long are we going?
Well, it's we could probably be going for what, about an hour and 15 minutes. Give us
Okay.
about 15 minutes of debrief time, or
Yeah, maybe 20 minutes of debrief,
20?
so an
Yeah.
hour and 10
Okay.
minutes.
So
Yeah.
Bill, you would do room 1 and Lou room 2, and I'll be in room 3.
Got
Okay.
it.
Yeah, is that okay? Okay.
Mhm.
And there we go. Open all the rooms. I think we lost. Okay, here we go. So you can click on the link. Okay. So I think everyone's familiar with the process here. So whoever would like to start, then I'll keep. Would someone like to keep time? 5-minute turns? Is there someone with a clock that can?
I can keep the time.
Okay, great. Yeah, just wave that. So our topic is listening, or whatever is alive for you. Whoever would like to start. And select who you'd like to speak to. Okay, Sam.
I'll just get it started off, and I'll select 2 as my listener. So what I connected with was this idea of internal listening, and I think I've been learning how to do that more and more inside myself, and to listen to the different parts of myself that all have different views. And I don't know, I kind of feel like being able to internally listen makes you a better external listener. I'll pause there to reflect.
And you were speaking to
2.
E2. Yeah, so if you want to reflect, 2. You're muted.
I have to reflect, Sam.
Uh-huh.
So could you please repeat me again? Because yeah.
So I connected with this idea of internal listening, and I was just sharing that I have been learning more and more how to listen to the different parts of myself that have different desires and viewpoints, and helping myself to feel heard on an internal level. And I feel like that helps improve external listening as well, the more we are able to listen internally.
Yeah, I just want to reflect that you want to improve your internal listening, and then but honestly, I didn't realize what's the difference between internal listening and external, but you said you keep trying to improve your listening internally, and then you improve your external skills. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add that for me, internal listening means that if we have a part of ourselves that is feeling hurt or scared or unsure, to like spend time listening to those parts and emotions and sides of ourselves in the moment, and just being mindful to it, so that those parts feel heard and understood.
Okay. Internal listening is for the feelings, especially for feelings, and someone might be anxious or frustrated, and you trying to keep keep tracking their feelings.
To keep track, but to really be like aware of and just curious about, like bring the same principles of the empathy circle of like curiosity and openness, but bring those same principles to listening to your own internal system. And it could be emotions, it could be thoughts or ideas, it could be, you know, desires, all of it.
And then you apply the principles of empathy cycles to the practice of your internal listening.
Yeah, just to apply the principles of the empathy circle, but to the internal listening. Yeah. Thank you. I feel heard.
So I have to choose one more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sir. Evan, could you please?
Yep. Listening.
I'm a retailer, construction materials retailing, and I just want to share with all of you how empathy important for my life. How empathy is important for my life.
Mm-hmm. So you'd like to share how, why or how empathy is important to you in your life. So.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I started my journey as a self-employed when I was 21. And my brother and my father was addicted to drugs, but I didn't know that. But I started my own business journey, and then I realized the conditions of theirs, and then I was trying to how I have to help them, how I have to accept them, and then I started to choose. I started to try how I have to how I have to say how I have to help them, and I was really anxious and then I found that empathy and have to empathize them, and I will this is the only way to help them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when you were 21, you learned that your brother was addicted to drugs, and sounds like you felt really concerned. You wanted to see how you could help him, and you found that empathy was really the only thing that you could do to help.
Yeah, and then I started empathy practices on my own way, and it has been 3.5 years now.
So for the past 3.5 years, you've been on this journey of learning about empathy. And
yeah, I feel really hard. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you feel heard. Okay. Let's see. So I'll speak to Pavel. Yeah, you're muted. There you go. Yeah, I'm thinking of what Tu is saying about drug addiction. I know you're interested in motivational interviewing, and that's part of got started. It's based on empathy, empathic listening, and it really helps support people who are addicted to drugs. I mean, that's where it started, was in alcohol, I think, recovery. So I just was seeing a connection there between what your interests are.
You can see a connection with the case of Tu and her brother, and how motivational interviewing also helps in this. And motivational interviewing started with addictions with alcohol, and it helps in addictions in general.
Yeah, and it's like if you want to make a change in your life, or you want to kind of grow, you need to be able to listen to what's going on inside you. And I think Carl Rogers talks about it. You can't make a change until you really listen and acknowledge, what's going on in you. I think that ties in with what Samantha is saying, is you have to be able to be sensitive. Yeah, you have to be able to be sensitive to the felt experience and sort of identify it. And then if you're able to share it and sort of acknowledge it, then you can grow to kind of to the next, and so the listening, kind of that self-listening is really important, and being heard by others to support listening. So that really supports our growth. So I guess it's that aspect of listening is something that's really helpful for personal growth in a constructive direction.
So you're saying that in order to change, a person has to be able to listen, has to be sensitive to this felt experience, and but not only he should hear himself, he also should be heard by others, and this will help him to move towards a positive direction.
And I think that's part of the empathy circle, is that's where that mutuality is, right? Maybe one of the values should be listening, right? I mean, there's a lot of values and we don't cover them all. It's like sort of an exploration. So a mutual listen, and that's why the mutuality, I think, is important, is because it's not just listening, one person listening, but it's really that mutuality, the mutuality of openness, the mutuality of listening, the mutuality of inclusion. So yeah, so it's really that mutual listening that we grow together.
So kind of you think that listening should be part of the values, but at the same time, you may say that it falls under the category of mutuality because we have to, it's two ways. We have
right.
to,
Uh-huh.
to listen.
And and it's fitting into that cultural aspect, because there's practices like NVC, which I know a lot of people have done, but it says it's all about you and your needs, right? Getting your needs met. And I think what the culture of empathy is about, we need a culture that supports empathy. So it's looking at the cultural aspects, and, you know, individual needs are a piece of that, but there's a broader framework of a culture that we need to address.
So there is a clear difference between the NVC and culture of empathy, where in NVC you have like this self-centeredness kind of, and in culture of empathy we include everyone as a whole. Everyone is important and has to be listened to.
Yeah, it's the culture. It's just have an awareness of the culture, that we're in a relationship, and look at the relationship as part of us too. So it's a little bit of a shift, yeah.
So having awareness of the culture, it's really important in the culture of empathy.
And like Samantha, I would love to get better at listening to myself. It feels like it's always a challenge. Like, how do I really identify? You know, I don't even have the vocabulary. Sometimes I feel it's such a loss of, you know, I can see the feelings, I can sense the feelings, but I don't have words. I don't have vocabulary to sort of name them. And so that's always a struggle, yeah, of how do I honestly look at, you know, sense what I'm feeling and be able to express it. So yeah, we need I need more ongoing practice for that.
So you kind of can see Samantha's point on self-listening, but at the same time, you struggle with that. How do you find the vocabulary, and how do you really sense and identify with it?
Mm-hmm. I feel fully heard, thanks.
Aoife, would you listen to me?
Yeah, I'm listening. My internet isn't great tonight, so I'll try my best.
Aoife, am I pronouncing your name right, Aoife?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So I actually came across by accident myself before I found the culture of empathy. This self-listening. I'm a regular meditator, and usually in the meditating process, you try not to get attached to your thoughts and just let them go and focus on the present moment, either on your bodily sensations or breath. But I began doing it in a bit different way, by just allowing my thoughts to express fully my ideas, hurts, feelings, and I just tried to empathize with them and hear them and reflect with them. I'll give you the time to reflect.
So you're a meditator, and before you came across the culture of empathy and the empathy circles, your relationship with the inner experience of sensation and thought was to not get attached and to just come back to the breath or the sensations. So that you've started relating differently, that you're instead now empathizing and reflecting back to your inner experience, what is happening.
Yeah, kind of. Basically, I start doing the opposite of what meditation is supposed to be. I just listened to my thoughts, ideas, feelings, what I'm not happy about, etc., etc., and I tried to acknowledge these things. And when I started doing this, I felt a sense of more control and calm in my life. It's like I've been suppressing these things, and during my meditations, I was allowing them to come forth. So during the day, they would not bother me because they got their chance to be expressed.
So you're wondering, was there, before you started this, was there a sense of suppression? And now that you're not doing that, that you're allowing things to be expressed, they're not bothering you so much during the day?
Yes. And another thing that I realized, which kind of James opened my eyes, was he used that term chronic conflict avoiders. And I think I am one. I often would not express my thoughts because I don't want them to lead to a conflict. Like, I'm a peaceful guy. I don't want to make conflict or argue with anyone. But at the same time, I realize that I'm not being truthful to myself. I'm hiding something about me not liking something in someone, let's say. And I'll give you a chance to reflect.
So you mentioned this term chronic conflict avoidance, and that's something you're familiar with in yourself, and you've been noticing that in doing that, because you want to keep the peace, that you're also not being truthful.
Yes, and also James used that term conflict escalation, but to me it's not about conflict escalation. It's like, okay, you can be honest now and not be afraid of conflict escalation, but through empathic listening and having an empathy circle, you avoid that conflict escalation. It's like you're still being honest, you still express yourself, you're not afraid to cause conflict escalation, but you prevent it through the use of empathy circle or empathic practices.
So in terms of the fear of escalation, of the conflict escalating, you now have a tool to de-escalate, which is the empathy.
Yes, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Thanks, Pavel. Sorry, everybody, my internet isn't great, so yeah. Samantha, would you listen to me?
Sure, listening.
I didn't hear any. Yeah, okay, will I continue?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the worst my internet has ever been on an empathy circle. So it's quite interesting to not be able to listen when I'm really willing to.
So your internet is not cooperating, and it's hindering your ability to really listen the way you want to.
Yeah, it feels like I'm kind of blindfolded or something in my sensory capacity, which is, it just is what it is. So I'm sitting with the discomfort of it.
Yeah, so you're feeling really uncomfortable about it, like you've had a big sensory input taken away from you, and you're just sitting with that right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm feeling really uncomfortable. I would say there's discomfort there, but like Pavel, I'm a pretty serious meditator, so it's like it's mildly uncomfortable. But I have the capacity, I suppose, to just let it be what it is.
So you're acknowledging that the discomfort is there, but your practice of meditation has allowed you to be with it in a way where it doesn't like take over.
Yeah. What I find with the empathy circle process so far is a kind of unexpected gift of it is in, which I didn't realize I was doing before, which is a bit like what Pavel was saying about the conflict avoidance, that in really sharing my own truth, I am less focused in a way on other people's reactions to that. And that has given me in my everyday life, I suppose, more self-listening. You know, I think I was listening too much to other people's experience and not enough to my own.
So it sounds like you're acknowledging that you've sort of always been one to speak your truth. And when you do that, you notice you're less concerned about how other people respond and how that might lead to escalation of conflict. And you see that as tying in with the empathy circle process.
Yeah, like I would speak my truth before, but then I would experience a lot of fear. Whereas now I'm fine that I'm speaking my truth and I'm listening to my own experience instead of I really feel like it's none of my business what someone else is experiencing afterwards, unless they want to share an actual, have a conversation. If they're pulling their hair out, there's not much I can do about that.
So over time, you've grown less afraid of how others respond to you when you speak your truth.
Yeah, thanks. I feel fully heard.
Pavel, will you listen for me?
I would be happy to.
I don't know, there's really a lot coming up for me right now. I'm just really, I'm appreciating others' acknowledgement of the concept of internal listening and its importance in the overall empathy movement. So I'm really appreciating what I'm hearing others share, and that gives me a warm feeling.
So there's a lot of going on for you right now, and you're very happy to hear other people's perspective on internal listening, and that makes you feel joyful, happy.
Yeah, because I feel like what I appreciate about Edwin, what he brought into the discussion is this idea that it is a culture of empathy is a two-way street. Like you need both that external listening and have others to hear you and to have the experience of being heard, but then also to be able to listen to yourself internally as well. And I don't know, I'm just noticing more and more the importance of the internal listening aspect.
So you appreciate that Edwin mentioned the concept of mutuality, of listening to yourself and listening to others. And this kind of makes you feel, see more and more the importance of it.
Yeah, and I actually also connected with what you were saying earlier, Pavel, about how a lot of meditation practices encourage this detachment from your thoughts. And that also always felt somewhat invalidating to me, and like I was suppressing, trying to push away the thoughts rather than and returning to the breath, as if the breath were the ideal rather than fully being present with the thoughts and the feelings as they arised in that moment.
So kind of the idea of suppressing your thoughts during meditation or pushing them away didn't resonate with you. And you see the need to allow them to come forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I feel heard.
Thank you. Edwin, would you listen to me?
Listening.
I know the topic, it's about listening, but I don't know, for some reason, James has been on my mind these days and the things he said. And from his perspective, I don't know if it's a accurate empathy, but to some extent I can empathize with him, and I see someone who feels that hasn't been heard, understood, and it's like a child screaming to its mom, like, hear me, listen to me.
Yeah, you know that the topic is listening, but something that's on your mind is really James, who was in other circle with you, and you feel that what's happening there is it's sort of like a child's like screaming, "I want to be heard, listen to me."
Yes, and I really like what you said to Bill, and I wonder what the reaction of James would have been if Bill empathized with him when James escalated.
Mm-hmm. So you're when James spoke out in the empathy circle, kind of that I had mentioned, well, one way to deal with that is to just give a short empathic listening to him. And you're just curious, what would have happened if that would have really happened if there'd been a short empathic listening to him.
Yeah. And at the same time, I can see the kind nature of Bill, like he's someone that is really patient and has a good heart, and he's been kind to James, and at the same time, James should not treat him in this way. I also acknowledge that.
Mm. So you're really seeing that Bill has a very kind heart, and that you don't see that that's a proper way that James treated him, that he shouldn't be treating him that way.
Yes. Thank you. Adrian, I feel fully.
I fully heard. Okay. Speak to 2 then. Okay, you're still muted. Okay, there you are. So yeah, I did want to go back to the listening. So there's something I was thinking about. There's the one thing is how might we deepen our listening? It's sort of like a question love to put out there, like what can we have the empathy circles. There's a certain level of connection. It kind of goes deeper, you know, more sort of real. What can we do? How might we actually deepen the listening and the sharing in the empathy circles? I'm just sort of sitting with that question.
So you're thinking about the steps to be more empathic listening. Yeah, like how do I have to say, the deeper listening means you need to track up the things and the feelings of the speakers. So how can we catch up step by step?
Yeah, it's like with there's 5 of us here. How do we really have a deeper connection? You know, how do we share more deeply? So I sort of sit with that, like there's a certain limit to the empathy circle, right? You just kind of listen and reflect, but there's probably other things we can do to actually deepen the sharing.
So now we are 5 here, and we share our thoughts and feelings, and then we become more closer, get closer.
Yeah, and how do we deepen that? Like, what can we do? Like, just how might we deepen? Sitting with that, like, how do we deepen the experience?
So you mean how can we you mean how can we fully empathize to others? I mean, deeper understanding is trying to empathize.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's like, what does it even mean to go deeper? You know, so what does it mean to have a deeper? Because sometimes I just feel like, oh, we've really connected. You know, there's a deep connection. It was very engaging. And other times, you know, it's nice, but and other times, like, oh, I'm a little bored. You know, so you know, how do you really get to that deep? And I think it's So I'll pause there.
So you mean sometimes it's like the cycle is like not quite interesting, but sometimes more interesting because the people in the cycles get closer, and then have to say they are in the right way or right practices, and then we become closer to get each other.
Yeah. And I think one thing is just I think that the route, since empathy is feeling into, I need to share my feelings more, you know, and how, you know, I need to be able to name, like, what am I feeling in the moment? Like, I actually feel, and it's like right now I feel sort of a space, 360-degree space around me. And I feel like in this part, kind of a warmth, you know, I feel a sort of a spaciousness, and then I feel a little bit of anxiety. It's like, oh, where is this going? You know, so a little bit of an anxiety comes up. Like, sometimes when I just stay with my feelings, it's like I don't know what's going to come next, you know, but then I can even name that I don't know what's going to come next. And it's like, it's this constant naming of the felt experiences that are arising. So there's sort of a skill, a way of being. Because sometimes I get kind of, I'm saying a lot here, I get stuck at looking at something here, and I don't name the feelings that are coming up. And then I feel a sense of stuckness. But then when I start naming, stepping back and naming the new feelings, that then I kind of feel like I'm more of an openness. So, and I like that feeling.
So you mean we try to name the feelings and thoughts as what we are currently what we are currently feelings and thoughts, and then we feel how do I have to say?
It's more me. It's not we. I was saying I. So I do want to have that be I.
Yeah. So we try to give a verdict, our feelings and thoughts, and then we are like I think we are like one. We don't have, we are not 5 people, but we are the same person, and we are in the same feelings, and then we try to name our feelings and thoughts.
Close enough, thanks. And I love Pavel's little sign. I'm going to make one like that with all the little colors. That's a great sign. Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
So can I, please, Sam?
Yep, I'm here and I'm listening.
Thank you. This is my first experience of at the Empathy Cycles, and then I feel anxious because I think I'm weak in listening, especially I didn't have quite enough experience with the native speakers, so I'm currently feeling anxious.
Yeah, as not a native speaker of English, you're feeling anxious about, and also not having as much experience being in an empathy circle. So you're, just feeling that in the moment and wanting to speak for it.
Yeah, and then but I'm trying to get more deeper in this cycle.
Your intention is to improve in those skills during this empathy circle.
Yeah, but sometimes I didn't catch up the meanings of some words like chronic conflicts, and that words is not familiar with me, and so
yeah. So when you encounter words that you're unfamiliar with as a non-native speaker, you're really unsure of how do I reflect that when I haven't got the meaning fully of what somebody's saying.
But I will try to be more proficient.
But you'll continue trying.
And I'm really interested in this empathy cycle, and I'm currently trying to be a qualified facilitator to help those who are interested in empathy in our country.
So you're really hoping to foster empathy in your country, Myanmar, and you are looking forward to learning more about how to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Thank you so much.
Aoife, will you listen?
Yes, I'm listening.
So when Edwin was sharing of wanting to know how do we go deeper, I could really connect with this emotion of like really wanting an answer to that question, just kind of like a yearning. And I was thinking about, as my training as a therapist in group work, we talk about the difference between process versus content. And I'll just pause there and before I explain what that is.
So I'm hearing you say that you resonated with what Edwin was saying emotionally, that you could feel in yourself. You really wanted to know what's the answer to deepening this process. And then you're moving into another thing, which is about in-group process in therapy, and the difference between content and process.
Yeah. So the way I've understood, like, content is the topic you're discussing. So like listening is the topic we're discussing right now. But the way I've been taught to help a group go deeper is to get away from the content and move more into the process, which is exactly what Edwin was talking about, where you just speak to what feelings are emerging inside of you, how you are connecting with or not connecting with others in the group, and speaking for that. You're speaking for the relationship that's happening in the moment and what that's doing, rather than the content or the topic.
So in terms of how in a group process you have in the past taken it deeper with your training, is to get away from having a topic or a theme or having any fixed content and let the process is the means by which the deepening and the connection occurs.
Yeah, and that process is essentially speaking for how the participants are relating to each other in real time. You know, how they're feeling towards one another, whether they are feeling open or closed, or what emotions somebody's topic or words trigger inside of them. So there's also that ability to listen, to do the self-listening and be able to speak for those inner parts and emotions.
And this deepening, the form that it takes is through relationship and the inner listening, and then the listening to each other, which ties in with what Edwin was saying about the deepening, that is the deepening process that you first related back to what he had said.
Yeah, so I felt like he was speaking for exactly this concept that I've been taught in my training of process versus content. And so when he brought up the idea of, well, just speaking for your own emotions, or taking risks and being vulnerable with what's real inside of you in the moment, even if it feels risky to share or somebody might judge you or criticize you, that is the true process and way of deepening the circle.
So the aliveness of what is current emotionally on a thought level, whatever it is the thing that connects us, and that the theme or the topic doesn't have to get in the way of that.
Exactly. Thank you. I feel heard.
Thanks. Tu, would you listen to me? I have a dog doing licking, a lot of licking right now, if you can hear it. She's licking her paws. So it's a funny sound I'm listening to. Would you like to reflect that back? Did you understand? Did you understand what I said?
Yeah, just a little. Could you please repeat me?
Yeah. My dog is licking her feet a lot, and I'm listening to the sound.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it. Your dog is licking her feet. Did you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed what you said, Hitu, about how you were feeling, because it made me realize that if we want to deepen our connection, one of the things is to listen to everyone's experience and then let that inform how you are communicating.
Yeah. You like the things that I mentioned before. When I said how I was feeling at the moment and I'm feeling right now, and then this is the key point to connect with each other, to connect, to empathize other.
Yeah. Because for me, this format, this structure is the most similar, the most powerful thing since my meditation, which is Vipassana, which comes from your country, from Myanmar. And it's the equal in power, but not just on an individual. It's a group process.
Yeah, because this is the same way in your meditation process. Is not for all, for ourselves. Is for the like neutrality, for the others we are being with, we are doing together with. Yeah.
And I started a group with some colleagues, but after 2 weeks they were exhausted. They didn't like it.
They didn't like the process, you mean? You studied the technique with some colleagues and then but they trying to refuse after 2 weeks.
Yeah, the main thing, they were trying too hard. I could see they couldn't relax because they wanted to be perfect. And it was very interesting to observe them being so unkind to themselves that they couldn't benefit because they were so hard on themselves.
So you think they're trying too hard to catch up the principle, but they can't because they are they can I think they can do self-empathy. Can I say that? They can do self-empathy to themselves.
Yeah, and now I'm remembering that this is being recorded. So oops. Yeah, but that's my interpretation. Maybe they just didn't like it and it was something else.
Yeah, this is your opinion, and they may not like your comment about them.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Hitu.
Thank you. My turn. So, Edwin, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes, listening.
And I'm trying to be a qualified facilitator for especially for adolescents who are willing to do empathy practices, but I have what I mean. I feel anxious because of co-suffering. When I try to empathize to someone's journey, which is unpleasant. And so, and at the time, I feel anxious and I feel like, oh, I try to feel just the way they are. So my feelings was not quite good. But for me, I can control my own feelings. But if I try to facilitate to the adolescents, so how I have to help them not to get wrong direction, yeah, because of the empathy practices.
Okay, so you're wanting to be a facilitator of empathy practices, and that when you are with people, you want to help them and support them, but you start feeling anxious, in sort of a co-suffering feeling, and you're just wondering how can you be more effective, or how can you address maybe that anxiety that you feel.
So I'll try to the cycles, and I'm really thankful to you and the Culture of Building Empathy organization. And I really would like to try to be qualified, and I would like to know the books what I like to read and learn. Yeah.
So you're feeling some gratitude towards the culture of empathy and the work that we're doing here, and sounds like you'd like some advice on books maybe to read, how to kind of improve your skills.
Yeah. And I'm trying to start up in very soon, like maybe in August. I will try to I will start my how do I have to say, my facilitating program. And yeah, I'm just trying to be qualifying. Yeah.
So in August, you'd like to begin holding your circles, and you'd like to be qualified. So you're just trying to get those skills to become qualified to offer empathic listening and maybe empathy circles.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I feel heard.
You feel heard. Okay, great. Pavel, can I speak to you?
Yes.
I love your sign. I have this, dull one just that I printed, and yours is so colorful. It feels, you feel it's kind of cheerful to see all those flowers and drawings. So I love the innovation of it. Yeah.
So you like my sign, how colorful it is and joyful, and so you just printed the sign yourself.
Yeah, so I'm going to make one of those like that. So, yeah, I was just thinking in terms of the anxiety, how to deal with anxiety. I think one thing is here in the training, it wasn't mentioned, but we're having a cohort. And the idea is that everyone taking this training, we're becoming friends and we're creating connections. So for, she'll have support from others from this group. So you're not alone. It's like you have this support of us to help you. So if you have anxiety, you can bring the anxiety like you just shared it here and just be heard, have your anxiety or concerns be heard and be supported by others in this group.
So you were thinking how to deal with the issue of anxiety with many people, and we thought that it would be nice if you created a cohort for these type of things, and people such as Sue would come and she'll make friends in a sense, and she'll feel more comfortable, so she'll feel less anxious and at the same time be able to express herself.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that she's being open about that anxiety, because that's the first thing is that sharing of it that helps sort of address it, bring it out into the open, and even if she's holding an empathy circle, she can even say that to the people. Hey, I'm feeling a little anxiety here. I just concerned that I might not do this well. And I think people in the empathy circle will understand that and actually appreciate the honesty and the openness. And I find myself, when I share that anxiety, it kind of lessens the pain or the anxiousness. I'm not having to have the extra energy of hiding it. So yeah.
So you appreciate that Sue is open about her feelings, and you think that other people will appreciate her vulnerability to share that, and at the same time you notice yourself that when you share your feelings, let's say if it's anxiety, it lessens.
Yeah, and also in the support group, what's good is like before you do an empathy circle, if you're feeling anxiety, is reach out to some friends and get a little empathy bath. So, oh, I'm going to be, and I do this for conflict mediation because it gets very tense. And I say to a friend, you know, can I get a pre-circle? And for half an hour, I get listening just for me. I say, oh, I'm concerned about what's going to happen. I don't know. This is, you know, maybe this is going to blow up. And so I just get a sort of an empathy bath for half an hour from them. And that helps sort of ground me too. It kind of creates more empathic resilience.
So in the case of the empathy support group, sometimes you would feel quite anxious, and it's nice when you reach to a friend and he'll be able to kind of give that empathy bath, and you feel that anxiety being dissipated in a sense, and it grounds you before the session.
Yeah, exactly. And then after the circle, after you've done a circle, also have a post circle with your friends. Say, just do a report on how it went so you can share, and say, I get half an hour or whatever just to share how that experience was of facilitating. And then you get that support. So it's pre-circle, you know, and post-circle. And then, you know, you do the Empathy Circle support group, which is also a place where you have a bunch of people who you can share your experience and they will support you. So it's a lot about having a lot of support. So you're not alone. We're all here to support each other. Yeah.
So you also like the idea of a post-empathy circle as much as pre-empathy circle. Sorry. And at the same time, during the support group, you also get a lot of support. So you get support before the support group, you get support during and after. And this is a very nice feeling to have so many people that you can count on.
I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just need to use the restroom, so I'm going to step out. Got a bladder.
Sam, would you listen to me?
Yep, listening.
So I kind of wanted Edwin to be here because there were some issues that I wanted to address in front of him, but I was wondering, for example, in the case with Aoife, she had her friends for 2 weeks and then it was too hard for them and they kind of gave up. They didn't have even compassion for themselves. And they were trying too hard. And I think that maybe, because I hope to start facilitating empathy circles with me, I would stumble upon the same thing. And how do I make it easier for people to adapt to the process is my question.
Yeah, so you were hoping for Edwin to be here. It's perfect timing. You were hoping for Edwin to be here for your speaking because you wanted his to speak on some of the things he said or hear his perspective. But you also wanted to pose a question that Aoife encountered with her circles and how people who seem to lack the self-empathy and leading potentially to exhaustion in the process. And you can imagine coming upon the same challenges as you facilitate circles, and you're kind of wondering, how do we make this process easier for people who may find it difficult or exhausting?
Yes. So I think maybe one of the ways to make it easier is to tell them in advance that the speaker should speak for much less, so it will give enough time for the listener to get the hang of it and reflect. And maybe sometimes, perhaps that's what has happened, I don't know, that people felt it was difficult for them to reflect. So the process was mentally exhausting, and they were feeling like, I don't want to do this anymore. Where it's something nice, but it's just that if you start them with smaller steps, they will adjust better.
So you're wondering if part of the reason why it was so exhausting for them is because the speakers spoke for such a long time, it was too much to keep in mind as the reflector, and you had to track a lot of things. And you're wondering if maybe a way to make that easier is to have the speaker speak for less time to give everybody practice in empathic reflection.
Yes. And then one of the benefits of empathy circles for myself, I noticed, is this emotional well-being that it gives me. Last session that I had on Friday, I felt this rush of endorphins to my system. I just felt like so happy. It's such a rarity to be heard these days, and when you're actually being heard, it brings you this sense of feeling bliss, in a sense.
So you're just noting and sharing that for you personally, the experience of being heard like that can lead to a feeling of bliss and lots of endorphins, and it's a really wonderful feeling.
Yes, and this made me realize that I can offer this gift to my friends. So I began listening more, talking less, and I noticed how the people start opening and share things with me that otherwise wouldn't.
So you're noticing that this gift you got from the empathy circles, you can now give that to your own friends and talk less and listen more. And you notice that when you started doing that, they started to open up and become more vulnerable with you and share more than they would have otherwise.
Yes. And something else that I noticed is that, let's say, when I started doing the empathy circles, I would feel mentally exhausted in the end. And I think that's because I was trying too hard. I'm like, okay, I was trying my best to reflect to the best of my abilities, but when I stopped doing that and I just did it like this time, when I was reflecting with Edwin, I didn't think, what should I reflect? I just listened like purely without thoughts of reflections in my mind. And I was able to do it. So I just let go of this idea of having to reflect properly.
So for you, you noticed in the beginning that you did experience some mental exhaustion in the concerns of not getting it right when reflecting, and there was a point at which you decided to kind of let go of that, and since then you've had a much greater ease around reflecting.
Yes, thank you, Sam. I feel for her.
Edwin, will you listen?
Yep, listening.
I just want to speak to earlier how much I appreciate Sue's sharing of that anxiety and how it points to what we're talking about of deepening the circle, because the process is sharing what's real and true for you in the moment, whether or not it connects with the topic. And I just appreciate and acknowledge the courage it took for her to share that, but also for even participating to begin with, given the barriers that she described. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
So you just want to acknowledge your appreciation for for just sharing her honest feelings of anxiety, and it really fit with what we were talking about before about sharing our feelings, and also an appreciation for someone maybe with the language barriers to be willing to come and be here, to sort of face those challenges. And just an appreciation for her being willing to do that. Kind of, I think, a deep felt appreciation.
Yeah. And I also, I relate to the mental exhaustion of trying too hard and feeling like worrying that I'm not going to reflect accurately. And I do still struggle with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just acknowledging that exhaustion, or even maybe concern, or maybe even anxiety about not reflecting well, or.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how to facilitate that experience of letting go of that. A part of me is thinking about maybe an exercise where you have the same person speaking, and one time you're listening and trying to reflect as best you can, but then you repeat the same process, only you agree ahead of time or make a promise to yourself, like, it's not, if I mess up, it's okay, it's not going to matter, and see if it feels different. Or I'm just kind of talking through potential exercises that might give somebody a felt sense of that letting go and really practicing that letting go.
Yeah, so it's that anxiety that people might feel when they do the empathic reflection, like, oh, I'm not going to do it well, I'm not going to do it right, and feeling anxiety. So you're thinking of trying to design some exercises to help people kind of overcome that anxiety.
And I also want to speak to, I mean, several people have, many people might have like attentional challenges, and just listening to somebody without the mind wandering or not fully connecting with what they're saying. Like, I want to acknowledge that that's an experience that some people have, that they might be afraid of happening, and how to make space for that, and like let them know it's okay if that happens, and just here's what you do if that were to happen.
So it sounds like you're looking at the different anxieties the speaker or the listener might have. Like the speaker might have an anxiety that the listener's really not paying full attention, and having maybe an exercise to address that, or some way of addressing that concern.
Well, it's more for the listener who might have anxiety that they won't hear the speaker.
Oh,
just because of, you know, their own attentional challenges. Like they might be a person who tends to have their mind wander when others are speaking, and haven't really built up that skill set to fully listen and allow them the space to like make that, like have that happen and let that be okay. But then I didn't think about, you know, how the speaker might feel about that too. So maybe there's agreements ahead of time of like, well, I'm not going to take it personal, and if that happens for you, that's okay, and we'll just repeat, or you can ask me to repeat what I said and it's going to be okay. Something like that.
yeah. Okay. So I had it misunderstood. It's really about the listener, and having the listener be at ease, because maybe they have sort of a way their mind wanders and they don't pay attention, or they just have stuff going on, or judgments, or just all kinds of distractions. And having some way of having them feel at ease about it. They might have self-judgments even about that, and finding ways of having them feel at ease with that. And so it's kind of, you're in design mode, thinking of exercises and designs to kind of address that.
Exactly.
Okay, I think we're at the time for, did you feel heard, or?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so I think we need to go back to the full room. I'm gonna close. I think Bill messaged me. Hope I was doing the timekeeping okay. Okay, thanks everyone. Yeah, I had so much more I wanted to still say. There was so many. I got a whole list of things, some things I wanted to address. So I have to save that for another time.
Okay. I think we had, what, 15? Okay. Ah, there we go. Okay. Well, welcome back. We're going to do a little kind of, you know, harvesting major, you know, what hit you, what was important. And we'll just do, you know, short little, you know, reflection on what happened. And I'll just start right away. And to Wasu, if, again, correct me, because I'm going to try until I get your name right. Is that okay? All right. All right. Could you start us off, please? And you're muted.
So my experience for session.
Yeah.
It's my first experience in Empathy Cycles, and I felt firstly I feel anxious, but after the cycles, and I felt fully heard, and that kindness of all of yours, and it's the first steps to get to catch up deeper understanding. This is the first step. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Samantha.
We had a lot of great topics and ideas come up, and I guess what's just sitting with me right now is, because I've participated in multiple empathy circles, and I feel every time once the time's up, it's always like, oh, there's so much more we could have said or done, but then at the same time, so often the empathy circles last quite a while, and so I'm left with this dichotomy of like wanting to keep going, but then it being time to stop and having that boundary. And how do you handle that? Because it tends to feel incomplete for me a lot of times.
Great, thanks, Samantha. Pavel?
Hello. So I got a few points. First, that empathy circles, they support your emotional well-being. The second point was, how can we make the process for the new people that join the empathy circles, since to some people they may find it mentally exhausting due to trying too hard in their reflections. So how can we make it easier for them to adapt so they come back later? And then the other topic that came up was about the inner and outer listening, that we should listen to our thoughts, feelings. We should let them emerge and acknowledge them, reflect upon them, and ultimately this will help us to be better outer listener. And the other point was, what can we do to connect better as a group? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot to think about there. Aoife.
Yeah, I was struggling to begin with my internet connection, and then I restarted my modem and it was okay. So that was a lesson. Maybe I should have done that before the session. Yeah, I was in the same. So all of the things that Pavel and Samantha and Atul were saying. I think the clarity that came from me in this session was the self-responsibility, you know, your own inner process, and then the group dynamic. They're very similar things, but they are two distinct things. And I like the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I love that saying. And I think it just, what you see in yourself in the group is what's in yourself. But the group can definitely help through the process of empathy. The connecting force of empathy can help you to heal or to evolve through whatever hindrances you have. That's it.
Thank you, Aoife. Greg.
I thought it went very well, pretty much. And I think that Lulu is very a good facilitator and leader, because I sort of saw him modeling things that I didn't really get before I saw them being modeled, as well as Brian, who was in our group, really felt like he was, well, everybody, Dean and Katrina as well. I felt like I was learning from them, because things on paper is like, oh, here's what you do. But then you see it in action. It's kind of different. So it was good.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Brian.
Yeah, what I learned most was from Katrina reflecting back me, and she could barely take in what I said, but she reflected back just this amazing energy that I barely even realized I was putting out, all this excitement. And she kind of just was like exasperated, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know I was so excited and high, you know, talking about what I was sharing. So the power of that just without words was amazing too. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Katrina?
Yeah, this was the first empathy circle I've ever done. So it was quite a bit of a steep learning curve for me, but a lot of it felt very familiar, a sort of familiar territory, but new territory at the same time. The group that I was in was really nice, but very comfortable, felt very comfortable. And I really enjoyed the way that Lou led the group and kind of modeled for us, you know, the way it works without too much explanation or intellectualizing about it. And for me, I think the actual reflecting back is a very new experience, and one that I'm keen to practice again. I think that's, you know, it's baby steps for me. That's where I'm at the moment, learning how to reflect back. So thank you. It was really good. I enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you, Katrina. Dean?
I'll just say, Katrina, you did really well at reflecting. I was very blessed again to be in such a wonderful group of warm souls. I did find myself panicking as usual to start off with, but then when I stopped trying to listen to the words and listen to the meaning, I could reflect the meaning far more easily than I could reflect the actual words. It's a privilege yet again. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dean. Max?
I really enjoyed the experience. I really enjoyed exchanging thoughts and ideas with like-minded people. And what I realized is that doing all this in English is much harder than I initially thought, but I do enjoy a good challenge, so that's great. And yeah, thanks to Bill for facilitating, and I had a really good feeling with the group, and it was good fun, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, so I can't remember when or if I've done empathy circles before, but this format does feel familiar for me. And so it was nice to sort of be reminded and refreshed on it. I know that our topic as a group was listening. I'm not sure if everybody was talking about the same topic. But I like the way that these conversations actually happen a lot slower. And as you get used to that pace, the things that you say end up being more intentional.
Great. Thank you, Alan. Sumita?
Yeah, this is also my first empathy circle here. And yeah, first, I like to say thank you to my group and to the facilitator. And yeah, I did not really enjoy it so much. And I'm also have to reflect for myself what I learned today, because it was very structured in my understanding and also a kind of intellectual today. And I found it kind of stressful to repeat and to be repeated word by word, and not so much go with what coming up. So I'm not so sure if I come back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your contribution, and whatever you decide, I appreciated you being here today, and it helped me to grow. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the circle was very fascinating for me for many reasons. I am comfortable with the format. I found comfort in the format, let me say that, of reflective and summarizing and paraphrasing. And yet to be an observer in the circle, I have this huge discomfort sitting in my heart right now, where, and I'm almost getting emotional about it, where I see how language can be a connector and it can be a barrier as well. I speak 3 languages fluently. I understand 7 languages very well, and yet there is this so much pain around not being able to connect with another person because of language, and the pressure of language is very real. So that's something that I'm going to take back with me, and yeah, and language is just the first barrier. The cultural, there's so much more diversity than I can never understand. So I'm really questioning myself, will I ever be able to listen to another person with my fullness and their fullness? So that's alive in me right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Anish. Lou?
Well, I'm actually really moved by what Anish just said, because I'm also, so I'm going to think about that too. Yeah, that kind of cultural complexity, language complexity. Yeah, there's a part of me, the part that, the lessons that I've gotten from nonviolent communication about the idea that, you know, there's a basic set of human values or human needs that we all have, and those needs get expressed in different ways in different cultures. But underneath, they're the same. that has served me really well in my life, connecting with others. And so I'd love to hear more from Anish about what he said.
Thanks, Lou. Edwin?
Yeah, I enjoy the sort of the exploration of listening, you know, looking at it from all different aspects and from different perspectives that others have. Somehow I'd like to kind of capture that in some way, more documented. I had a lot more to say. It's like, I think like Samantha, like Sam, you're saying, it's like, it's just, hey, it could have gone for another hour, really. There's just so much more. And we talked about the importance of feelings. And I know Tu mentioned, you know, she's from Myanmar, was struggling with, you know, shared some of her struggles and anxieties and shared that feeling of anxiety. And I could feel that in the room. And I felt the real connection, and we all had a real appreciation for her sharing that. So I found, you know, with the language, it was, you know, it was the underlying feelings were very real and very connecting. So I guess I don't have the, you know, there's a little bit language issues, but underneath there, I felt real connection. So, yeah, that's what came up for me.
Well, I really appreciated the people in the room, and also the challenges that were presented, and it helps me to grow. And I just want to say that people who, you know, for whom English is not their first language, I really appreciate the gift that you give me in sharing your perspective with me that I wouldn't get otherwise. It's my failure of, you know, of just speaking, you know, being monolingual that circumscribes it. So when you make that brave, I think, you know, outreach, it touches my heart, and I want to thank people. I do want to talk a little bit about what we're doing here, and this is like the beginning of a facilitation training. And so we are going to be going on Thursday, and then the next Tuesday, and then the next Thursday after that. And I realize that people have different agendas and goals here and experiences with the Empathy Circle. You may not be ready to do the facilitation training yet, but we are going to do that. We do have open cafes on 10 a.m. Pacific on Friday, where we're talking about the values of a culture of empathy, and then also on Saturday, where we're talking about right now Extinction Rebellion's demands. So that's another way you can kind of dip your toe in the water, but we also really want to get together a cohort here who will stick together for the training if you feel ready for that, and we'd love to take this off. Edwin, Lou, you want to say anything more about that? Yeah.
I could say a few words. So we're trying to develop a training workflow. So right now we have the Facebook event page. You know, anybody can join there. We find a time when people can join a cohort. Maybe it wasn't really well explained, but and I just created a survey which I'll put in there, and it kind of goes through and kind of asks just a little bit about yourself, and also mentions that really to take part in this training, you would want to have taken part in 3 empathy circles before. And we know because it was out, you know, just out in public, that people might not have seen that. But ideally, you would have taken part in 3 empathy circles before you take part in the Empathy Circle Facilitation Training. And you can actually count today, I guess, as an experience of one of those empathy circles. And if you haven't done other empathy circles, like Bill was saying, Friday would be great to take part in that, because it's the deep dive into the values of a culture of empathy, which Lou kind of began to mention some of those. We are sort of developing a process. You know, it's still sort of in the works, and we're trying to create the workflow. So we really would love to have any sort of feedback, you know, how to make that more effective, and hopefully we'll be creating cohorts ongoing every several weeks, you know, have another cohort, and so have that be sort of an ongoing training. And then people can join a Empathy Circle support group, which we have every Friday, and eventually have some training so you can become a train the trainer as well. So we're developing a whole sort of a curriculum, and this is sort of one of the first steps. Well, some other of our group too have been holding some other trainings, more specific facilitator training specifically for the Extinction Rebellion group, which I know Ava has been part of too. So that's just some thoughts that are coming up for me. And I just put the link into the survey if you want to take that survey if you haven't.
Is this the post-class survey or the pre-class survey?
Pre-class, ideally.
So are you also going to send out a post-class survey?
We don't have one yet.
We don't have
still
one
need
yet.
to create
Okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah, and I want to express appreciation for everyone, especially the people that I was in the Empathy Circle with. I really enjoyed all of you and appreciate your participation. Yeah, so I'm excited by what's happened today and looking forward to diving deeper into not just the Empathy Circle, but the role of the facilitator and what role does the facilitator play in terms of holding the circle and guiding it, and what kind of challenges come up in doing that, and what are ways to respond to that. Those are some of the things we'll be addressing over the course of our time together in the subsequent classes. So thank you, everyone.
Okay. Just if you are and you've got the experience and you are interested, please respond to us to let us know, because we'll be doing this on, again, on Thursday and the next Tuesday and the Thursday after that. So we just have to, it would help us to know like who's in for the facilitating training. Maybe you're not ready now. You want to take a few more circles. You're just seeing, I know there's some people exploring. That's fine as well. If you're ready at a later date, that's great. If you're not, that's all great too. And we just hope that your experience, helped widen your perspective. Okay.
I might mention, I'm just seeing Anish and Samantha just posted in the chat. If you're committed to continue with the next 3, you can just say,
okay. So okay, great. Thank you for all those responses. Thank you. It feels really good. So thanks. Lou, anything else before we?
No, I think since people are posting things in the chat, so something that I like to do sometimes at the end of a class is say, so what question are you sitting with right now, given the experience that you had? So if people want to post whatever that question that's in your mind that you might be sitting with right now, it'd be interesting to hear that feedback.
Okay, great. And then
we'll be creating a survey too. So hopefully we'll have surveys, post surveys too for future classes.
Yeah. And Anish wants to say something.
Yeah,
go ahead, Anish.
I think the question would be too long, so I would rather ask it here, and I don't expect an answer. So I know for sure that attending one of the circles, Empathy Circles, really gave me an insight of what to expect from here today. So I came mentally prepared. The question that I have to you now is, people who come directly, how do you ensure that it's not shock and awe for them? Like, I feel sad when knowing that people are shocked and it was not what they expected, not for them to come back, create sadness in me. So maybe as an organizer, you could probably have some more balance and checks. Because I found a lot of merit in coming and attending the circle, which allowed me to come back and be a part of this training.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we want to respect your time. I'm sorry, Pavel.
Yes, something to what Anish said as well. So Sumita said that the experience wasn't pleasant for her and she doesn't think that she will come back. And kind of my question is like, what would have to be different so the process was easier for her and she would come back?
Right, good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we'll see you. I see a lot on Thursday. I'm excited. And if you're not coming back, our door is still open whenever you might feel ready.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Everyone, thank you.
Okay.
Could you so tell me, is it the same time on Thursday?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
All right, okay. I can make it then.